Erevar, come! Gaze upon the factions that you can join in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered. With the re-release of the Mongrel Dogs of the Empire game, I have decided in my divine wisdom to rank some playable factions, Nerevar. Without further delay, let's begin. Let us begin with the Blades, or the protectors of Sir Patrick the Mongrel Dog Emperor himself. These samurai-looking mongrel dogs of the Empire were the reason the Heart and I were destroyed, but they could not protect the Emperor from the mythic Dawn Ouchie. At least in the remastered, the Ouchie was to the neck. Boris just stood there watching as the mythic Dawn Enwas attacked the Emperor. It's like watching your wife and another Enwa. Never mind, Nerevar. Overall, it's an incompetent faction, but not as bad as it was in Skyrim. Also, I really dislike Joffrey. What a fool do you have to be to store the Amulet of Kings, the only thing that can light the dragon fires and prevent the barrier between Oblivion and Mundus falling apart in a wooden chest. A wooden chest! Nerevar. D tier. The Thieves Guild has a very eventful quest line, but the amount of sneaking around you have to do gets on my nerves. Quite a bit of time is spent on trying to throw off the mongrel dog law enforcement off your back. Eventually, you steal an Elder Scroll from a bunch of blind monks, and then get the Cowl of Nocturnal as a reward. The original Grey Fox becomes the Count of Anvil again. When you put that cowl on, your bounty is only 500 gold, and you can't pay it. Generally, the quest lines are complex and interesting for your usual Thieves Guild quests that you would find in Skyrim. C tier, Nerevar. Knights of the Thorn is a faction that is joined for rescuing the Count of Cheydinhall's cowardly son, Farmer. Oh, sorry, Farwill Indaris. I do not care if he is a Dunmer. He dishonors the Sixth House and the tribe unmourned. There is nothing to discuss here. F tier, one mission faction. Knights of the White Stallion are also in the same category. You help that orc Enwa Mazoga twice by defeating a bunch of bandits for the Count of Leowin, and she undeservedly becomes Sir Mazoga. Should have just chosen body type 2 or body type 3 in the character selector screen. F tier. Order of the Virtuous Blood is basically Dawnguard Light. They haunt vampires and pay good coin for vampire dust. D tier. Just because it makes some good gold. Nerevar, if you are enjoying this sermon, please raise your thumb, subscribe to my sermon, and write your thoughts on the parchment down below. Ah, the 9 divines. Why would you worship the false gods when you can worship me, Dagoth Ur? F tier, Nerevar, don't dispute this. The Mages Guild puts you through the most intense anti-necromancer campaign in the Elder Scrolls history. First, you go through the quests of each guild headquarters in different cities, which are interesting in their own right, especially when you help that one senile Enwa get her memories back or something. You get your recommendations from each one and get into Arcane University, which is in much better shape than the College of Winterhold Nerevar. However, I always found these institutions lacking outside of Morrowind. Also, necromancers are a staple of the Elder Scrolls series, but the return of the Worm King and the showdown with him was quite an exciting prospect. Generally, this quest line will give you a run for its money, Marco. What do you mean my pun is not funny, Nerevar? I am a god. How can you say a god is not funny? In the remastered, at least Manny Marco is somewhat intimidating. B tier in the remastered, but in the original it is a C tier questline. The Court of Madness serves that crazy false god Sheogorath as he attempts to halt the Grey March from consuming all of Shivering Isles. Turns out, he is actually Jigalag, the false god of order, who doesn't exactly make an appearance later in Skyrim, other than his sword. Anyhow, the hero of Kvatch does a bunch of fetch quests for Sheogorath, but there are some wild adventures here and there with driving adventurers mad, or giving that Bosmer Enwa of Mania a dose of green moat. There are also shadows between the armies of Sheogorath and the Knights of Order, which are also quite interesting. One thing that Haskell and I share is that this is all giving me a big headache. Anyhow, the hero of Kavach-Mantle's Sheogorath, the End, A-tier faction. There's also Knights of the Nine faction, full of stupid puzzles and fetch quests when it comes to searching for the relics. Sometimes it requires making some sacrifices for some Enwas and taking on curses. Very unnecessary, Nerevar. The only exciting part of the quest is facing down against Umaril and putting an end to his reign. He looks better in the remastered, but is still a false god, B-tier. But the new polished armor of that Enwa Pelinal Whitestrake, the Divine Crusader, looks quite shiny in the remastered version. The Fighters Guild has your usual fantasy RPG quests, however. As time progresses, they become a lot more interesting. You get to make shish kebabs from rats and mountain lions in the basement, and you also get to become Goblin Slayer once, arguably twice, but those were not really goblins. Overall, it is not the best quest line out there, but it definitely does provide an entertaining experience. You get to come to different locations through fire and war. I personally enjoyed the intrigue with the Blackwood Company. Speaking of the Blackwood Company, you work for them by exterminating those goblins the second time around. Trust me, Nerevar, they are definitely goblins, and not Enwas whose lives don't matter. Generally, the Fighters Guild is a D-tier faction. The Dark Brotherhood is a group of assassin Enwas that deviated from the Morag Tong and started to worship the Night Mother, Sithis, the Void, and other Enwa stuff that does not make a lick of sense to me. They are as culty as Mythic Dawn. However, Nerevar, this is probably one of the most engaging quest lines in the Elder Scrolls series history. It is multi-layered with captivating, quirky characters. It was Assassin's Creed, before Assassin's Creed was even a game. Now with the remastered, it also looks like Assassin's Creed. The contracts and the bonuses are unique, and you are encouraged to get the bonuses. Also, they dislike the mongrel dogs of the Empire. The way they handled Adamas Philida was masterful. The whodunit mission was a whole storyline within itself. Oh, and the betrayal of the Dark Brotherhood, Nerevar. That was just the icing on the cake. S-tier faction, even though I find them to be heretics. The arena is also one of the more unique factions. In fact, nothing like this exists in other Elder Scrolls games. It is an actual arena where you can participate in fights against the Yellow Team. Your mission is to absolutely decimate the Yellow Team in order to honor the Sixth House and the tribe unmourned. You also get to take part in a telenovela, Nerevar. You get to find out the origins of the Grey Prince, and it is one of the better quest lines of the game, that Orkenwa will lose all his will to live after that. You also get to fight the 3 Argonian farm tools in high definition since the Oblivion Remaster has come out, a tier. Come, Nerevar, come. With the Oblivion Remaster out, we still have many things to discuss. With the Oblivion Remastered, not only do you have the option to play as 9 different Enwas or a Dunmer, but you get to choose where your Enwa came from. Each race has 2 different choices of origin, affecting stats that used to be linked to your gender. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant body type. And today we will read and discuss a little bit about these locations. Let us start with the lizards. If you are an Argonian Enwa, you can choose between Arnesia and Thornmarsh, both somewhat obscure choices in contested lands. Let's begin with Arnesia. You hail from Arnesia, where the slavers of Morrowind are still active. The hide-and-seek every time there was a raid made you extremely quick and nimble. We know very little about Arnesia, besides the fact it is in eastern Black Marsh and was the site of the Arnesian War. This conflict started as a slave revolt in the southern lands of the House Dress. and escalated into a full-scale war between Black Marsh and Morrowind. Morrowind's armies ultimately defeated the Argonians and expanded Morrowind's territory to the south. But as of Third Era 432, the Argonians began to reclaim land conquered during the Arnesian War. Part of my plans, Nerevar, was to reclaim these lands back for Morrowind. A shame I have been stuck doing these sermons ever since you stopped me. Next is Thornmarsh. Thornmarsh, your birth region, is called the Jewel of the East. But behind the nickname lies a darker reality. You dabbled in magic just to survive, and your quick wits allowed you to live until this day. We don't know much about Thornmarsh either, to be honest, but we at least know more about it than Arnesia. It is a coastal region in northeastern Black Marsh, and contains the city of Thorn, where the Jewel of the East title seems to come from. The city had its own history with House Dress, with Dress even controlling the territory at certain points. There was also one incident prior where the city was destroyed by Naga and Daedra. But honestly, Nerevar, I already tire of talking of these scale skins. Let us move on. Now, let us talk about the Bretons, a sentence you'd hate to hear if you were from Orsinium. Now, the Bretons have the interesting choice of being from the Sistris Archipelago or mainland High Rock. We begin with Sistris. As a child, you were always spending time on the docks of one of the islands, gaining some money by helping merchants carrying their goods and learning from their adventures. The Sistris Archipelago is a group of islands southwest of High Rock and Hammerfell. The major islands there are the populous High Isle, the tropical Amenos, the volcanic Yuffalon, and the Galen. All of these islands have strong druidic influence as they were settled originally by Breton druids in the First Era. We move on to High Rock. Being from High Rock, you were raised in the homeland of the Bretons. Going through all the great cities of the province made you quick on your feet. High Rock is, of course, the Breton homeland, full of many kingdoms and their many quarrels. Home to various biomes such as temperate forests, hilly vistas, treacherous swamps, and even snowy mountains further east. It is also home to the Adamantium Tower, or Direni Tower, the first of the metaphysical towers put in place by the gods. If you are enjoying this sermon, Nerevar, raise your thumb, subscribe to my sermons, and write on the parchment below. I know it's what you have all been waiting for, so let's move on to the only real choice for what race you should play as, the Dunmer. This superior race can choose between Vardenfell and mainland Morrowind. Of course, we begin with Vardenfell. You are a true child of Vardenfell. Amongst the volcanic wasteland, you were taught that resilience is the greatest of all Dunmer qualities. Ah yes, beautiful Vardenfell. What a wonderful choice. The natural choice, if you'd want to be closer to me. It is home to Red Mountain, where destiny is made. Don't worry too much about what is to come for this land. Instead, marvel at its beauty, if only it wasn't tainted by outlanders. We move on to mainland Morrowind. As a Dunmer on the mainland, you grew amongst all kind of traders. You learned all there was to know about negotiations and how to make people react the way you need them to. Speaking of outlanders, as mentioned, mainland Vardenfell is home to many of them, Nerevar. Was even worse during the days of the Ebonheart Pact. Imagine that, Nerevar. Nords, Dunmer, and Argonians working together makes me want to retch. At least those days are long over, and there are far worse places than the mainland. It is still Morrowind, after all. Let us continue with those uppity Altmer, who can choose between being from Auridon or the main Somerset Isle. We begin with Auridon. Born on the island of Auridon, you were proud to live on the first island of the Somersets. There, you spent countless hours swimming in the pristine waters. Auridon is the smaller of the two most notable islands of the Somerset Isles, but it was the first settled by the Aldmer after they left their supposed Aldmeris, one of its most notable settlements in Firsthold. It is the oldest city in the Isles. It is also where Vanus Galerion started the Mages Guild. Next is Somerset. You grew up among the great towers of Alinor that nearly touched the sky. You spent countless hours climbing and navigating the sunlit streets of the Somerset capital. Somerset, also sometimes called Alinor, though this is also the name of its capital city, is the largest of the Somerset Isles. It is the home of the famous Crystal Tower, one of the 8 metaphysical towers of Nirn. It is also home to exotic beasts such as griffins, indrics, and elemental salamanders. Ugh, I guess considering you'll be spending time in Cyrodiil, I should tell you about your choices as an Imperial, better known as a mongrel dog of the Empire. First on the chopping block is Nibene. You are a true Imperial born into the heart of the Empire. The number of cities and their size led you to travel hastily. Nibene refers to Eastern Cyrodiil and the traditional heart of the Empire. The people there are often retain more ancient customs, having a different vibe from the Colovians. At least they used to. The people of Nibene consider themselves to be more civilized and sophisticated than Colovians. Also, guards in the Nibene were known for wearing newt-scale armor. Imagine that. Can't even wear something normal like chitin or netch leather. Ha! Next is Colovia, or Skyrim Light. Colovia inhabitants such as yourself are known for their autonomy, including toward the rest of the Empire. You inherited the willfulness of your forebearers. Colovia is Western Cyrodiil, known for its hardworking and self-sufficient people, the frontiermen of Colovia. Colovians are known primarily to me as the people with the really stupid hats. I mean, honestly, Nerevar, I know you like wearing it, but have you really seen what you look like? Now the walking carpets. Khajiit can choose between Anaquina, also known as Northern Elsewhere, or Palatine, Southern Elsewhere. We begin with Anaquina. The harsh region where you lived and trained hardened your body and taught you how to defend yourself with your bare fists or any weapon you could find. The northern kingdom of Elsewhere is home to the more arid deserts of the province. Beasts such as terror birds, sencha cats, desert aelets, and even griffins wander these wastelands. And needless to say, it's home to all varieties of the catfolk. Next is Palatine. Your parents lived in Palatine, and your childhood memories are filled playing and running around in the jungles or on the pristine beaches. The southern kingdom of Elsewhere is far more tropical, home to jungled regions and warm coastlines. Strange beasts like the armored glyptodons make their home here, and you can even see hackwings from Black Marsh on its coasts. It has some ancient history and ruins dating back to the times when dragons raged in the region. If you are a Nord, you can choose to be from Western or Eastern Skyrim. We begin with Western Skyrim. You lived in the west of Skyrim, a rugged environment filled with rough terrain and dangerous beasts. You are prepared to survive in even the most challenging climates. Western Skyrim was actually once an independent kingdom, when Eastern Skyrim joined the Ebonheart Pact. It is also home to the Reach, which often was held by the Reachmen. The Reach is known for its dangerous cliffs and abominations like hagravens and briarhearts. Next is Eastern Skyrim. Either due to extreme snowstorms the College of Mages, or simply stubbornness, the people of Eastern Skyrim, such as you, are known for their tenacity and resourcefulness. Eastern Skyrim is known for some of its more traditional old holds, and is the future home to the Stormcloak Rebellion. While more north, you have to deal with some of the province's most extreme colds. Further south, you have the more temperate Riften. Now for the Orcs, or Orsimer, or Ornim, or whatever they're calling themselves now. You can choose between being a Stronghold Orc or an Orsinium Orc. We begin with Stronghold Orcs. Your fate was decided when you were born. As a member of a stronghold, you would serve your chieftain with honor and would make the Orcs proud. Your charisma and resilience were honed for when you'd serve. The Stronghold Orcs have many of their own strange and unique customs. Typically ruled by a chieftain who takes many wives, almost everyone in the stronghold takes up particular roles. Many Orcs find these positions limiting and will leave to join society at large, often becoming mongrel imperial dogs in the Legion. Next are Orsinium Orcs. You are proud to have been raised in Orsinium, where you trained to be as versatile a warrior as possible. As such, you are better with magic than most other Orcs. Orsinium is the ephemeral city of the Orcs, ephemeral in that it hardly sticks around for long due to how many enemies the Orc have. While the first Orsinium was originally founded in the First Era by freed Orcish and Goblin slaves and refugees, the current Orsinium, as of the late Third Era, is Nova Orsinium, established properly during the warp in the west by Gortwog, who convinced the Empire to see his mongrel race as people again. How touching. Speaking of enemies of the Orcs, let us move on to Redguards. They can choose between being from the Dragontail Mountains or the Alik'r Desert. First are the Dragontail Mountains. Your upbringing under the shadow of the mountain peaks was a happy one. Immersed in Redguard customs, you developed charm, wit, and the ability to turn a conversation around. The Dragontail Mountains are an impressive mountain range in Hammerfell and shadow many notable locations. They contain the Upper Craglorn region and then curve to the southwest towards the Fallen Wastes and the Iliac Bay. These regions have been home to deadly creatures such as Dunaracers, the artificial Manticora beasts, and Dragonlings, which are a totally different thing from Dragon's Nerevar. Next is the Alik'r Desert. As a child in the sands of the Alik'r Desert, your education revolved around martial might. You are a prime example of why Redguards are the best warriors. While the Alik'r Desert has been the home of the Redguards ever since they invaded as the Ra Gada, these Deathlands have previously been home to many cultures such as Needs, Orcs, Daedra-worshipping Altmer, Dwarves, and the interdimensional goblins from who pushed out the dwarves. No, I actually am not making that up. Nerevar. Look up Goblin Gate. I know it sounds like a political scandal, but it is 100% real. Anyways, the Redguards beat these goblins with some magic swords or whatever. Now let us finish with the Bosmer. Your choices are being from Grotwood and Reaper's March, which by the way weren't actually named regions until ESO. A few other origins mention lore established in ESO. Just thought this one was worth mentioning for the Enwazahem, I mean. Attendees to my sermons who get confused over canonicity. We begin with Grotwood. You spent your childhood in Grotwood, near the region devastated by Molag Bal. The foul energies still linger there, and your resilience grew amidst the danger. As for the background of this place, Grotwood is the southeastern region of Valenwood, and the devastation of Molag Bal mentioned is not the more famous Plain Meld, but instead the prior destruction of the settlement Gilvardel, or Gliverdale if you are a mongrel dog of the Empire. On the 19th of Sun's Dawn, First Era 2920, Molag Bal appeared in a red mist over Gilvardel and destroyed the city in a single night. And it is said he was summoned by a Khajiit Enwa, who was known as the Mad King of Senchal. We end with Reaper's March. The border region that saw you grow is plagued by anger and resentment after centuries of war. You quickly learned how to soothe people and avoid unnecessary conflicts. Reaper's March is a region connecting the jungles of northeastern Valenwood with the rolling plains of northwestern Elsweyr. While it has served as a place of camaraderie and commerce during the times in which the Bosmer and Khajiit were allied, such as during the First Aldmeri Dominion, it being a border region means it has obviously also been a place where the many wars between the two have been fought. Now that you have heard about all of these origins, please write down on the parchment below what you think of the new origin system. Perhaps you think it should return for Elder Scrolls 6. Also tell us what places you would like to live in. Unless it is anywhere but Morrowind, then I'm less interested. But still feel free to write what you think down below. Come, Nerevar, come! Witness the Oblivion Remastered and the traitors that populate the mongrel dog of the Empire province Cyrodiil and the realm of the false god Sheogorath, the Daedric Prince of Madness, the Shivering Isles. Just like in Skyrim, there are many Enwas that you just cannot trust here. You turn your face around and they, well, betray you and turn you into Glarthir, who ironically becomes a traitor himself by betraying his neighbors and putting them on a list of the unliving. Seriously, Nerevar, the Suiril brothers, Tutius Demonetizius, and Bernadette Penniless all didn't think that badly of Glarthir. Nevertheless, he wanted them removed from Nirn, a very treacherous and unhinged wood elf Enwa. He even betrays the hero of Kvatch if they refuse to help him with his crazy shenanigans. Moving on to Jordander and Arnora. Nerevar, have you ever had a couple's squabble that turned into a crime of such magnitude that your husband ended up in the Bruma jail? Well, that's what the mongrel dog Enwa Arnora got herself into. She and Jordander are petty thieves, and after a robbery gone wrong and Jorander's arrest, both of them are plotting against each other. Arnora wants to know where Jorander's secret stash is, while Jorander wants Arnona permanently removed from the face of Mundus. However, Nerevar, there is a secret traitor in their midst that you may not know about. It is a mongrel dog named Tyrelius Logellus, the Bruma Jailer, and professional eavesdropper who ambushes the hero of Kvatch after dealing with Arnora. Typical day in Beyond Cyrodiil, Bruma. Unfortunately, Nerevar, Dunmer can be traitors too. You and I know this very well. Anyhow, there is this Dunmer named Raynil Dralas, who cosplays as a vampire hunter, and Nerevar, these dumb Enwas in Bruma, eat it up. The guards side with him after he claims that Brandon Lyrian was a vampire and snuffs his life out. He frames him by putting some dead Enwa into Brandon's basement. Nerevar, do you see a sign on Brandon Lyrian's house that says, Dead Enwa Storage? Do you see a sign that says, Dead Enwa Storage? No, as his wife would tell you, storing dead Outlanders is not his job. Raynil also did the same thing in Skingrad, and the guards there also bought the story. What a grand and intoxicating innocence. What incompetence. But besides the point, turns out that Raynil Dralas, Geliborn, and Brandon Lyrian kept some treasure in a cave that required 3 keys. And well, Nerevar, as you can tell by the title of this sermon, Raynil Draelus betrayed them by labeling them as vampires and getting their keys to unlock the chest. Of course, the hero of Kvatch stops him and gets the spoils of war. Ceridur is a high elf Enwa, leading the Order of Virtuous Blood, who also claims to be hunting vampires. Nerevar, let me ask you this question. If someone tells you they are a vampire hunter and order you to eliminate some random Enwa named Roland Genseric, living in a cabin in the woods, would you take him seriously after the incident with Raynil Draelus? Write on the parchment down below and raise your thumbs and subscribe to my sermons while you are at it. Coming back to Ceridur, though, he's a bloodthirsty vampire himself, cosplaying as a vampire hunter to throw off suspicion off himself. Of course, the hero of Kvatch takes care of this traitor after his annoying monologue. We move on to Thandon, the Duke of Mania, and Syl, the Duchess of Dementia. The Duke of Mania is a Bosmer named Thandon, who is one of the few Bosmer in a position of power. Ever since the adoring Fan and Fargoth, they were meant to be simps. However, Sheogorath made him into a full-on Duke of Mania. He has a goofy-looking helmet that is surprisingly very powerful, called the Diadem of Euphoria. The Golden Saints are loyal to him after, of course, Sheogorath himself. In any case, to take his place, the hero of Kvatch has to give him some, maybe too much green mote. Syl, the Duchess of Dementia, is also a Bosmer. Once again, I have not seen many of them in positions of power outside of Valenwood, so it is an impressive feat. Syl is extremely high-strung and paranoid about everyone around her. She even has a specialized chamber for shocking interrogations. Considering the fact that she literally gets annihilated by the hero of Kvatch, she had a point in being paranoid. If one is eliminated, the other will betray the false god of madness, Sheogorath. Nerevar, you see. They are having an affair, and if the hero of Kvatch decides to meddle in their little affair, the surviving lover will be so heartbroken that they will join the Knights of Order in order to advance that false god of order, Jigalag. Of course, the hero of Kvatch deals with them promptly. Now the question here is this: does Sheogorath betray these two in any way? Is Sheogorath a traitor? Write your thoughts on the parchment below. There is also Murine, living in New Sheoth, in the Crucible District. She is a high elf Enwa, obsessed with conspiracies. She lives with Uncle Leo, a zombie, who has to endure all of her conspiratorial ravings. She, alongside other courtiers of Dementia, is plotting against Syl, the Duchess of Dementia, and she is found out because the hero of Kvatch becomes the Grand Inquisitor and interrogates everyone in a crucible to get to the bottom of this conspiracy. Syl eventually gives her some shock therapy. Nerevar, have you heard about the Deepscorn Hollow and the Crimson Scars? Well, there was this Altmer vampire Enwa named Lord Greywyn Blenwith, and he betrayed the Dark Brotherhood by creating a splinter faction called the Crimson Scars, who were all vampires. He tried to infect the other Dark Brotherhood members, but was betrayed by the Crimson Scars. He was destroyed in Deepscorn Hollow in the Second Era, which the hero of Kvatch later rediscovered. Since we are now discussing factions and the Dark Brotherhood, we should discuss the difficult topic of the Breton Enwa, Mathieu Bellamont. Yes, Nerevar, the psycho of the Elder Scrolls, with a disturbing secret. You see, the reason he joined the Dark Brotherhood in the first place is to avenge a family tragedy. His mother used to have a good head on her shoulders until the appearance of Lucien Lechance, the speaker of the Dark Brotherhood. So Bellamont, driven by grief and vengeance, decided to infiltrate the Dark Brotherhood and take his revenge against Lucian. And what a glorious mess he makes of it. By the time the assassin arrives at Applewatch to inform Lucien about Bellamont's true intentions, the poor sod is already skewered like some roadside beast. It's a gruesome sight, Nerevar, that even I might not be able to fully show you the picture of this macabre art piece. Bellamont puts on his little act, feigning ignorance. Then comes the grand reveal. The lucky lady of Bravil is the Night Mother herself. Shady dealings even in Braville's most famous landmark. Wouldn't you agree? So the assassin and a few other hapless souls head to meet this Dunmer Night Mother, only for Bellamont to spring his trap, attacking everyone like a drunken gar. Foolish, wouldn't you say? A true Dark Brotherhood assassin would have picked them off one by one. But alas, some Inwas are just born incompetent, and you can imagine how well that went for him. Lastly, in the Dark Brotherhood, there is also this farm tool shadow-scale Argonian named Scartail, who decided to quiet quit working for the Dunmer Night Mother. Look, Nerevar, I would think that he is being reasonable if he wasn't an Argonian. The Fighters Guild only had one betrayal, and that is by the Wood Elf Maglir. It's almost like you cannot trust Wood Elves, Nerevar. There are 4 of them on this list already. Anyhow, Maglir defaults on a few contracts and does not complete them, for which he faces the wrath of Modron Orion. He eventually joins the Blackwood Company and starts working of them, only to be eliminated by the hero of Kvatch during the final stand. Also, I would include the Blackwood Company and the Goblin Fiasco here, but I do not think what the Blackwood Company did to the hero of Kvatch was betrayal. It was more of a response to the infiltration, but let me know if you disagree on the parchment below. Well, Nerevar, the next traitor is a Dunmer. Look, Nerevar, it is a bit more complicated with the Dunmer. Unlike the Bosmer, their betrayals sort of make sense. Anyway, her name is Myvrina Arano, and she is a Thieves Guild member. However, she is actually a mole working for the mongrel dogs of the Empire, specifically Hieronymus Lex. She is tax-exempt, just like the worshippers of the false gods, which should be an indication that she might be a traitor to the Thieves Guild. However, the hero of Kvatch successfully frames her, and the mongrel dogs arrest her, despite her being their mole. What did we learn here, Nerevar? Dunmer shouldn't trust the Empire. And trust me instead, Dagoth Ur. Now, Nerevar, we are moving on to the Mages Guild and the disaster they are experiencing because Hannibal Traven banned necromancy. So many guild members have become traitors, Nerevar. It shows the lack of academic freedom in the guild. Most of the betrayals have to do with necromancy, with the exception of Irana and Kalthar, of course. Irana is an Altmer mage that is interested in fingering the mountain. Wait, what do you mean a mistake? Oh, I apologize, Nerevar. Irana is interested in a book called Fingers of the Mountain that allows the user to cast an extremely powerful shock spell. She basically betrays the Coral Mages Guild and its farm tool leader, Tikus, by not obeying his rules. And, while I might not like Altmer Inwas, good for her. You teach that lizard who is boss. Kalthar is a magical Nord Enwa, like we haven't had enough of those in Skyrim. Who is in the Mages Guild of Leowyn? Because he is unhappy with the Bosmer Enwa de Gale, who needs an amulet to function. Otherwise, she is tormented by visions, and does not make any sense. When the hero of Kvatch decides to become a grave robber and plunder the grave of de Gale's father to get her a second amulet, Calthar decides to prevent that from happening and therefore betraying the guild. Of course, he gets dealt with very quickly and easily. The rest of the Mages Guild traitors have to do with necromancy. First, there is Falcar, an Altmer Enoir, who is the leader of the Cheydinhal Mages Guild. He sends the hero of Kvatch to a well in order to drown them, just like he did with another Enoir named Vidkun. However, he is unable to fulfill his mission. Later on, it is found out that he had a lot of black soul gems in his room. The hero of Kvatch meets him later in some Ayleid ruin and defeats him in an unfair battle. Seriously, Nerevar, most traitors just get utterly annihilated by those who are afflicted with the main character syndrome. There is also Karanya, also an Altmer High Elf. All right, maybe that Enoir Pelinal has a point about some of the Mer, but not the Dunmer. If you look at the demographics of this sermon, it's mostly the Altmer and the Bosmer that are responsible for most of the betrayals. Anyhow, going back to Karanya, she is an Almer Enoir, who is a master wizard and part of the Council of Wizards in the Mages Guild. However, she is also, surprise, surprise, a master necromancer. She teleports to Fort Ontos to continue working with the necromancers and Manamarco. Of course, she is unable to succeed and is quickly defeated by the hero of Kvatch. One last traitor I will discuss is Marcator Hosidus, is a mongrel dog of the Empire steward of the Enoir vampire Count Janus Hasildor. He claims that the Jarl wants to speak with the hero of Kvatch near some suspicious cave outside of Skingrad. Look, Nerevar, Glarthir might have been paranoid, but Skingrad is a dangerous place. Of course, Mercator Hosidus ambushes the hero of Kvatch, but the Count... no, not that one. Count Janus Hasildor shows up to aid the hero of Kvatch in defeating the traitor. There is also the Breton Enoir Joffrey, and he might not be a traitor in a traditional sense. But what stupid Enoir places the Amulet of Kings inside a wooden box? It does not matter if it is in a secret compartment. In Mundus, there is powerful magic, weapons, lockpicks, and other tools that can easily break wood. What was this fool thinking? Well, Nerevar, there is also the Betrayals of the hero of Kvatch. It is such a long rap sheet that I will save it for another sermon. If you would like to hear more, please write, the Enoir, hero of Kvatch, betrayed me. Also, write on the parchment below if I have missed any other traitors.
By Azura, it's you! You're not the Grand Champion, but you're here, and that's what matters. I have been happily digging around and very joyously investigated the deepest and darkest secrets of these would-be champions that fill up the arena like lambs to the slaughter. I always knew the Grand Champion was the best of the best, and now I am here to prove it. Let's see those contestants. No name, no introduction. The very first rival that the Grand Champion faces is perhaps the most mysterious. Whoever she is, she's either too peasantry to be of note or she's intentionally hidden her identity. All we know is that she's a wood elf and uses a sword and shield. Either way, the Grand Champion makes quick work of this Yellow Team zealot. The best way to end a species is to start with the youngest, after all. Another no-name fights a fruitless battle against the almighty Grand Champion. This time, it's a man, a Breton man who also favors the sword and board. No amount of blocking can save you from your inevitable demise. The first advancement match that the Grand Champion undertakes is against a Navenser Godian archer. Just like all of the other pick dogs, we know very little, except that this one has a bow instead of the sword and shields that we've already seen. Are they all just worthless corpses, or is something else at play here?
Continue the sermon, you Enoir.
As it turns out, brawlers hit the ground the same way pit dogs do when faced against the Grand Champion. This node is big and tough and hateful against Argodians. Maybe they're the reason he's here fighting's first scrap coin. He wields an axe and shields, but still crumbles before the Grand Champion's combat of choice. The next fight is the first bending of the rules that we see. Due to Wood Elf sisters being twins, they're allowed to fight together. If the Grand Champion had a twin, we would need 2 arenas to keep up with them. But, as it turns out, sisters that live together die together. The next brawler to get bloodied by the blade of the Grand Champion is a Khajiit that prefers the steel and heft to his kin's traditional approach, almost as if he was raised under the kin of an orc. Despite this cat's extra durability, he bleeds like the rest when faced against the Grand Champion. This Red Guard is the first bloodletter to truly earn their name when pitted against the Grand Champion. He's known for his versatility in that he can use a mace or a sword, but that pales in comparison to the Grand Champion's power of choice. The next bloodletter wears heavy armor, but swings with a short sword, meaning they are slow and have no reach, so that's an interesting strategy. They must not teach Bretons proper battle strategy for entertainment purposes. The third bloodletter of the yellow team is a Dunmer, and the Grand Champion puts him right back where all Dunmer belong, the ground. The yellow team actually presents someone worth presenting. The owner and wielder of Shimmerstrike claims an impressive winning streak, but the blood on his hands are mere puddles in the wake of the Grand Champion. This wood elf must have slain hundreds back in his homeland based on how hungrily he slashes his favorite dagger. Too bad fate punished him for his crimes by pitting him against the Grand Champion. This yellow team's myrmidon seems awfully familiar to the pit dogs of here. No name, no information apart from race, using the sword and shield, dies by the hand of the Grand Champion. So many similarities.
Remind them to subscribe to my sermons.
For 2 myrmidons to face off in an advancement match, they both must have killed at least 12 opponents. That's 24 deaths to get here. And while the orc may be mighty, he marks a 25th death in one of the many counts of the Grand Champion's footfalls. The first warrior, or shall we say body, that steps in the way of the Grand Champion's path is adored with a long sword and shield. How interesting. How familiar. It's like someone is taking hold of the yellow team and driving them down the same path, thinking the same way, dying by the same hand. The yellow team's second warrior is actually no warrior at all, but a mage. I find magic to be rather dishonest. In fact, there's only one kind of magic I respect, and I bet you'll never guess which one it is. Alright, fine, you got me. It's whatever magic type the Grand Champion is using, which is clearly stronger than the yellow team warriors. I dare say I have so much respect for this final warrior. Her bloodlust carries beyond the bounds of the arena. In fact, some say she's the blood-crazed sister of Grogon Gro-Polmark and was kicked from the Dark Brotherhood for her excessive and unnecessary violence. Or perhaps that's just a rumor I'm trying to start. That's for you to decide, my dear audience. The first gladiator fight pitted against our esteemed Grand Champion is the yellow team's attempt at pulling a fast one. They enlist 3 fighters that are prisoners from Black Marsh, imprisoned for heinous acts and promised freedom at the exchange of the Grand Champion's life. This match absolutely disgusts me. Show me the resume of these prisoners. I need to know their body count, because if they do not match the requirements of a gladiator, then this match is nothing but a slap in the face. There's no integrity these days, I tell you. The next yellow team member to die is another heavy armored Khajiit. The yellow team members are all so similar, it's like they're all under one mind. One single thought controlling many bodies, and all of which can be bloodied by the Grand Champion. This Breton,
he looks like a bit of a dandy,
but unfortunately they stand in the way of the Grand Champion and their next title. This Breton also,
but he's deadly with a blade.
Just as much as when he's a corpse versus when he's alive, but his body marks the Grand Champion's ascension to hero. Do you know what it takes to be a hero? I certainly do. 21 bodies. The Grand Champion faces off against a foe with a bit of history. This Imperial is an important contender, one that has a life much different than the rest. From the moment he was a boy, he wanted to serve his kingdom and protect it from evil. He wanted to be a member of the Blades. And so he did just that, training and dedicating his entire life to becoming one of the Blades and protecting the Emperor of Tamriel. Then the Mystic Dawn attacked and killed Emperor Uriel Septim and his bloodline, causing immense guilt and torment to swell up within the Yellow Hero. He left his post as a Blades, and taking with him his tarnished sword, battered helm, and broken devotion, he began beating beggars in the streets. But that wasn't enough. This hero was hungry for more, and he found it right here in the arena. Not long after the murder of Uriel, this hero has killed upwards of 20 fighters from the enemy team, only to find his own end at the hands of the Grand Champion. May this hero find his emperor on the other side. Would you like to know this High Elf Mage's story? I can tell it to you if you like. He bears an enchanted shield that belonged to his father, a mage that specialized in protection magic. This High Elf hero was raised with the expectations to follow in his father's footsteps, and together they would push the boundaries of protection magics. His father wished to do this for the benefit of all Altmer, but hundreds of years of pressure caused something in this hero to snap. He was no longer interested in his father's magic. Instead, he invested all his time and will learning how to destroy with magic. And he did exactly that, burning his family home to the ground. Within those ashes, he found his father's enchantments engraved on a shield, and decided to take it with him, so that only he would ever be blessed by the magic his father created. With all that rage and all that knowledge, he made a fine hero, but he is no grand champion. The Yellow Team champion steps up to defend her title. With her, 2 lower-tiered fighters eagerly await their chance at their own advancements, but they don't know what the Yellow Champion knows. She's seen the Grand Champion fight every match with cold calculation and unrelenting ferocity, ever since they stepped their perfect feet into the blood pit. She knows that she will probably die, even with the rookies fighting with her. But there's also the chance she could use them as fodder. Maybe them alone would appease the bloodlust in the Grand Champion. But no. She knows better. She remembers what that Grand Champion did to those Argonian prisoners, and she knows that this marks the end of her own long and bloody journey. In her heart, she couldn't be happier. To die at the hands of someone as monstrous as the Grand Champion is like a dream come true. In her final moments, she realizes where she went wrong. Following the indoctrination of her membership in the Yellow Team, she was granted a private audience with the false idol known as the Grey Prince. There, the son of a vampire used his innate abilities to charm the Yellow Champion into serving him and leading the training of all new followers to fight him and for him. And so the Yellow Champion laid down her twin axes in favor of fighting with a sword and shield, just like the Grey Prince. She then instilled this fighting style in her training, slowly taking over the Yellow Team to become an army of brainwashed vampire spawn, all loyal to the Grey Prince. But all that is over now. The false idol faces the true Grand Champion. The Grand Champion faces his final foe before completing his destiny. The Grey Prince, false idol that he is, still accepts the Grand Champion's challenge. Despite him being a half-undead, the mastermind of the Yellow Team's secrets still must maintain a face nobility in order to keep status. It's that naive pride and desire for fame that becomes his ultimate downfall. The Grand Champion steps forth with a new name for the crowd to scream with glee: the Divine Adventure. Yes, this will do nicely, as so many lives need to be avenged.
City Arena. Believe it or not, someone has actually challenged the unbeatable Arena Grand Champion. But who, you might ask, could possibly be brave enough to face such a fearless foe? Who could wrest the title from our famed Grey Prince? Good people, I give you the blue team's latest champion, a warrior of skill, strength, and determination. Behold, the Divine Avenger! Lords and ladies, citizens of the Empire, I give you the
Let's get this over with. I'm just warming up, you pathetic worm. Yeah. This ends here. Die! Die, cur!
Good people, you have just witnessed the impossible. Agronak Malad has been defeated. I say again, the Grey Prince has been defeated. Behold, the new hero of the people of Cyrodiil. Behold, your arena grand champion, the Divine Avenger. Esteemed grand champion, you may leave the arena now. See the Blade Master to receive your winnings and be awarded your raiment of valor.
It is important to note, though, once Agronak finds out that he is half undead, he does not have the will to carry on anymore. Maybe he was not a villain, since he did not know about his vampiric charms. But the Grand Champion is the one to end all of that suffering. There you have it, my dear viewers, the story of the Grand Champion and all the sweet, delicious blood spilt to get his name. Oh, that's right, you already know that there's more than one. But there's many Grand Champions that exist out there that I follow around endlessly. In fact, I consider each and every one of you a Grand Champion now, in my eyes. And you know how hard it is to get rid of me, Grand Champion. I will follow you forever, and not even death will separate us. See you soon, Grand Champion.
Come, Nerevar, come. With the Oblivion Remaster out, the creatures and monsters of Cyrodiil have certainly been on everyone's mind. But an Elder Scrolls game can only show so much of a province's creatures, as these games provide only a limited look at the world of Nirn. Come now, you didn't think the Imperial City was actually that small, did you? What a grand and intoxicating innocence. Today we'll be discussing a number of creatures that live in Cyrodiil that are not present in Oblivion Remastered. We will begin with the lycanthropes. Now, werewolves can, of course, be found in every province, and this includes Cyrodiil. But it is not just these that are found there. For instance, it is said werebears can be found in the northern parts of the province. But more interesting than these two more commonly known lycanthropes are the were-lions. Yes, while we have not seen these creatures in person, the Imperial Province, as well as Blackmarsh and the wetter parts of elsewhere, are home to the man-beasts with the visage of a lion. We do not know much about this strain of lycanthropy beyond that, I'm afraid. Also, if you are curious, Cyrodiil is also home to normal lions as well. Not to be confused with the mountain lions or pumas you can encounter in Oblivion. The people of Cyrodiil have actually managed to breed lions for use as mounts as well. On the topic of cats, I would like to mention lynxes. While typical species of lynx can also be found in various parts of Tamriel, there isn't too much interesting to say about them. But what are somewhat more interesting are tiger lynxes, larger Senshe-like lynxes found in places like the West Weald. Unlike normal lynxes, they are large enough to be used as mounts. Also, somewhat freakishly, the cubs of these large lynxes are identical to the adults of other lynx species. If you don't understand why that is strange, Nerevar, imagine if there was a species of giants whose children looked identical to fully grown myrrh. Just disturbing. Now let us move on to bog dogs, swamp creatures primarily found in the Blackwood region near the border with Blackmarsh, but they have also been known to reside in the West Weald as well. These are beastly-looking creatures with large mouths and have fur on their back that is overgrown with moss. allowing them to better camouflage within the swampy environments they live in. Despite their name, they are quite obviously not actual dogs, though they can be kept as pets. They also have a tan-colored cousin known as the saltwater bog dog, found on Tamriel's southern coasts and islands, who blend in with sand and piles of seaweed rather than swampy foliage. To move on to a similar creature, Durzogs are reptilian dog-like creatures often found in swampy environments. Defray must have ran out of ideas or something. Many might think of them as Morrowind creatures, but they are actually found in many areas of Tamriel. This is due to them being found almost anywhere you can find goblins. Yes, goblins keep the little beasts as pets, sometimes even breeding them as mounts. As such, given Cyrodiil's sizable goblin population, it is only natural that the Durzogs are found there as well. Members of the Dark Brotherhood have even used Durzog mounts, which are bred for speed and silence. Next, we will cover the river newts. The Nibene region is apparently home to large, scaly river newts. Nibene's river guards are known to make newt-scale armor from them. These armors can occasionally be found in other parts of Tamriel, such as here in Morrowind. Not much else is known about the newts themselves, as we haven't seen them directly, just the armors made from their scales. But we do know that Tamriel's salamanders can grow to massive sizes and sometimes have elemental abilities. These standard salamanders have also been found in Cyrodiil, around the border region with Blackmarsh. Speaking of the Nibene, it is worth noting that dragons were once found in the heartlands of Cyrodiil, particularly during the lifetime of Tiber Septim, who offered dragons protection in exchange for their loyalty. During his reign, dragons were said to circle overhead the imperial city, and aquatic river dragons were said to rust their hides in its surrounding waters. Now, Nerevar, I know we have been covering a lot of swamp creatures, but we have at least one more to cover. Death Hoppers are giant frogs found in Blackwood and the West Weald, similar in their range to bog dogs. These massive frogs are capable of swallowing men or mer whole, grabbing them with prehensile tongues. They are typically green, but older brown ones are known to exist. Next, we are going to cover an especially bizarre creature, but first, I will need to give you a small history lesson. The Recollection were a second-era Bosmer cult within the larger Dawnway cultural movement. The Bosmer that followed the Dawnway believed the aliens to be their ancestors, and that they should inherit the legacy of their forebears. If you weren't aware, Nerevar, it is actually true that many modern Bosmer have Ayleid ancestors, as Ayleid refugees were welcomed into Valenwood after the Alessian Rebellion, though these Ayleids were eventually absorbed into the Bosmer culture. Now, I know you are wondering what this has to do with the creatures of Cyrodiil, and I am getting to that. The Recollection, the more extreme sect of the Dawnway, wanted to take extreme measures to reclaim their birthright, aka the homeland of the mongrel dogs of the Empire. They employed corrupted magic, wildburn seeds, to grow a massive tropical forest that expanded into the West Weald of Cyrodiil, mimicking the ancient jungles that once grew there when the aliens ruled the territory. This forest caused many non-native creatures to arrive in Cyrodiil, as well as corrupting native ones with the strange blue wildburn. Though, of course, this Dawnwood forest was eventually disposed of, possibly by Tiber Septim himself. To finally get to the point, the Recollection created a new type of creature using their corrupted nature magic known as the Thorikar. Now, the Thorikar is an odd sort of chimera, sired in the grow pits of the Recollection. They appear to combine the traits of several creatures, notably scorpions, quasi-gryphs, and what appear to be Senshi Rat Khajiit, though it is unclear if real Khajiit are used in the process of creating them. Knowing the Bosmer, I would not be surprised. These creatures were used as war mounts as well as war beasts. A few of the mongrel dogs, and even some goblins, managed to actually capture some Thorikars and train them for their own uses. Despite being unnaturally created, the beasts had the capability to breed, and did so by laying eggs. Their highly adaptable nature meant they could quickly spread to other parts of the province, becoming new subspecies, including a snowy variant found in the Jarrow Mountains. The growth of the Dawnwood also caused other instances of unusual fauna to appear. For instance, did you know Cyrodiil is actually home to several species of giant insect? Yes, creatures such as shulks and giant wasps live in the Imperial homeland, but usually only deep underground, and typically encountered by the mongrel dogs when they clear out goblin caves. However, the upheaval caused by the growth of the Dawnwood temporarily stirred many of these chitinous beasts out of their typical abodes. Now let us move on to...
Let the game start.
I
Begin
see.
lightning round
It
now,
appears
or
my
you're
time
in
is being
N1.
cut short. Well, Nerevar, it turns out there are far too many creatures to talk about individually, so I am forced to participate in the lightning round. Ready, set, go. Cyrodiil has been home to very strange nature spirits such as aggressions of root and forest wraiths. On the border of Hammerfell, it is possible to see flightless terror birds, bipedal reptilian worm-mouths, and bizarre featherless birds known as guzzards. Cyrodiil has been home to primitive beast folk Enwas such as lamias and, at one point, fauns, whose presence was a bit of a mystery, perhaps related to the supposed satyrs of Valenwood. Giants and their mammoth herds can be found in Cyrodiil's northern reaches. Quickwater caimans are crocodilians found in Quickwater Cave. Fellrunners are flightless birds, with a notable Cyrodiilic species being the Niben River Fellrunner. When Yegar Than ruled Cyrodiil, many strange creatures could be found in his services, such as snake-like organs, undead ghouls, and Oh!
Time's up, you N1.
I am so sorry, Nerevar. It looks like we completely ran out of time. It looks like we'll need to discuss those axe-wielding dinosaurs that are completely unrelated to Argonians in another sermon. Now, while there are surely plenty of other creatures of Cyrodiil not found within Oblivion Remastered, I think I have covered most of the more interesting ones I could in the time allotted. Now, I must ask those of you who have attended my sermons, which of these creatures do you wish you could have encountered in Oblivion or Oblivion Remastered? And are there any of these you'd wish to see in more of the future Elder Scrolls installments? Please write your thoughts down on the parchment below. Come, Nerevar, come. I was quite surprised that the Oblivion Remaster came with all the available DLC, including the very minor ones. There is also a new DLC that adds 2 new dungeons and 2 new Enwas into the game, in addition to worthless armor sets. Without further delay, let us look at the Oblivion Remastered DLCs. We begin with the Shivering Isles, the land of that false god of madness, Sheogorath. Nerevar, if the main Oblivion game was not unhinged enough for you with the crazy factions like the Dark Brotherhood, side quests with the weird mongrel dogs of the Empire and Hackdirt, and the necromancers of the Mages Guild, the grand heist at the Gold Palace in the Imperial City. Oh, and that Enwa wood elf Glarthir with his conspiracies. Not enough for you? Well, I bring you the Shivering Isles. Dark seducers, golden saints, ghostly Enwas fighting wars, mushrooms just like in Morrowind, unhinged Enwas roaming the land, each one of them has their quirk. If one false god is enough, how about 2 false gods? 2 crazy Bosmer? A chamberlain that shares my glorious voice? And the cheese is to die for. Nerevar, there is so much happening on the Shivering Isles, it's insane. No, literally, it is absolute madness and off its rocker. The hero of Kvatch even mantles the false god Sheogorath himself. But I am getting ahead of myself. These islands are an insane asylum
They
of...
are not an insane asylum. They're a mental health retreat. Permanently.
Yes, well, be that as it may, it is what we all ended up in while waiting for the release of the Oblivion Remaster. Generally, other than the graphics, nothing much has changed, and there weren't too many bugs, but there were a lot. You know what I mean, Nerevar. If you haven't had enough of mantling crazy and absolutely unhinged Enwas voiced by the same guy, well, I bring you the Knights of the Nine DLC for Oblivion Remastered. The hero of Kvatch becomes the incarnation of the Divine Crusader after listening to some stupid prophecy from a mongrel dog prophet praising the false gods. You go on some fetch quest, getting the relics of Pelennor Whitestrait, the annoying Elfinator that wants to eliminate all Myr, or Knife Ears, as he calls us. That Enwa is absolutely annoying and does not honor the 6th house and the tribe unmourned. Anywho, ghostly knights send the hero of Kvatch to fetch different relics from different dungeons, full of puzzles that might bug out at any second and softlock you from the game. There is also that one useless nature trial with that hippie false god Kinnereth, and stamina-sucking gauntlets in the Choral Chapel. While all of that is being done, Enwas gather at the Priory of the Nine to join the Order of the Nine. Finally, once all the relics of the Divine Crusader and the Avengers are assembled, time comes to fight Umaril the Unfeathered, as well as his Aurorans. Now, Nerevar, while fighting one Umaril is not that big of a challenge, what happens if you have to fight two? Two Umarils, Nerevar. Tumarils, if you will. Well, that's what the hero of Kvatch has to deal with. We move on to Frostcrag Spire, or the Wizard's Tower. Nerevar, if you want to have overpowered spells and go on a power trip like a god, this is the place for you. It has an alchemy garden, an altar for enchanting, an altar for spell-making, and an altar for making permanent Atronach followers. You also have teleportation pads to every mage's guild for added convenience. There is even a vault with a bunch of imp guards. No one can ever break in, so perhaps this is a bit overkill. Of course, you have to pay a pretty septum for all the new additions, but overall the reward is immeasurable. Speaking of a pretty septum, back in the day, in the year of your false god 2006, do you know what you could buy for 2 American septums, also known as dollars? 2 American septums? Not a lot, to be honest, really, but why would you choose to buy Oblivion horse armor? Oblivion horse armor, Nerevar? Really? Even the remastered version does not look that impressive. It just does not honor the 6th house and the tribe unmourned. If you are enjoying this sermon and would like to see more like it, don't forget to raise your thumbs, subscribe to my sermons, and write on the parchment down below which DLC for Oblivion Remastered you prefer and what DLC would you like to see developed, because those lazy Enwas can develop new DLC, they just won't. If you are feeling particularly evil, Nerevar, you can get the Vile Lair DLC, also known as Deep Scorn Hollow. We discussed this place in a previous sermon. Well, there was this Ultima Vampire Enwa named Lord Graven Blenvith, and he betrayed the Dark Brotherhood by creating a splinter faction called the Crimson Scars, who were all vampires. He attempted to infect the other Dark Brotherhood members, but was ultimately betrayed by another member of the Crimson Scars. He tried to reform this order in Deep Scorn Hollow in the Third Era, but failed, which the hero of Kvatch later discovers. There are multiple upgrades that can be made to this place, including enlisting a dark minion, a vampire coffin to sleep in, the Ichor of Sithis, and many other things. But the biggest saving grace of this place is that it has a font that heals you from vampirism, and lets you bypass the stupid Cure for Vampirism quest. Nerevar, that one is extremely bugged. Nerevar, do you feel your kleptomania is getting out of control? Well, the Thieves Guild DLC is just for you. Dunbarrow Cave, the pinnacle of naveling competence and pirate cosplay. Tucked so delicately under Anvil's armpit, you'd think the guards were trying not to notice. Truly a hidden haven for sea-stained scum and morally flexible individuals with names like Mulin the Mongrel or Kafiz. May their pathfinding AI rest in peace. A cave-turned-pirate cove turned expensive real estate opportunities sold to you by the same imperial bureaucrats who tax the air you exhale. You pay good septums for a moldy cave, a sunken ship that leaks hope, and a crew that couldn't navigate a straight canal without being complete Enwas. You also get a pet warthog named Bacon, so I guess it has that going for it. If being a thief or a vampire assassin does not honor the 6th house and the tribe unmourned, how about I offer you the Fighter's Stronghold DLC, known as Battlehorn Castle. This is a very generic castle, with Enwa mongrel dog and half-breed Breton architecture, though it apparently belonged to a Redguard order. It has your usual bedrooms, barracks, dining area, and Dwemer Forge, if you would believe it, along with other useless stuff. One of the more interesting features is you are able to make a trophy hall with statues of various types of creatures you have slain. And of course, you get an endless supply of volunteer meat shields with the men-at-arms. While they're only of limited use, you can never have too many meat shields. And to move on, I see. There's also a secret to this castle involving a character from Daggerfall known as Lord Kane and the unique artifacts he possesses. So perhaps there's more to this generic-looking abode than meets the eye. Tell me, Nerevar, did it ever bother you that all Daedric Princes had their artifacts available except for one? Because Mehrunes Dagon is the main antagonist of the Mongrel Dog game, he doesn't really have a shrine outside the Mythic Dawn. Anywho, the hero of Kvatch has to venture into a convoluted dungeon of Sundercliff Watch, an alien ruin of Varsa Balim, to face a Talvani mage Frathin Drothin. He is gathering an army there. What kind of army, you ask? The Drothmeri army, of course. The army is primarily made up of Dunmer mercenaries, criminals, and rebels who wish to see the Empire overthrown, which frankly honors the Sixth House and the Tribe Unmourned the most in this Forsaken game that doesn't even have a single mention of me, Dagoth Ur. Once the 23-zone dungeon is cleared and Drothin is destroyed, the hero of Kvatch gets Mehrunes' Razor. It disintegrates armor and has a chance of one-shotting enemies with the Banishment perk. Honestly, Nerevar, this weapon can solve all of your problems. Next, we will talk about the Deluxe Edition additions. You have 4 new quests, though really it is only a pair of 2-stage normal ones. One has you follow the trail of Mythic Dawn notes left around Cyrodiil to join or infiltrate a group of Mythic Dawn cultists. You can either take the opportunity to kill them, or, my preferred option, sacrifice a mongrel dog of the Empire for them and then kill them. Regardless of your decision, you get the ability to summon a Dremora Damimami, who can give you an infinite supply of Mehrunes Dagon-themed armor. Turns out she doesn't care who you kill as long as you do it well. My kind of woman. In the other quests, you hear about mysterious disappearances near Kvatch and meet with the member of the Order of the Hour, an order devoted to the false god Akatosh. He tells you to investigate an alien ruin which you discover has a time wound in it. You then kill a lich who stole an Elder Scroll from the Order to create the time wound. When you return the Elder Scroll to the priest, he will then make you a member of the Order of the Hour, and will be available to give you an infinite supply of Akatosh-themed equipment. Oh, and how could I forget? The Deluxe Edition adds 2 types of themed horse armor as rewards to go with these new equipment sets as well. Yes, Bethesda is still technically selling horse armor to you in 2025. Old habits die hard. Nerevar, are you into stars and space? No, not in that way. That game does not honor the Sixth House and the Tribe Unmourned. Anyhow, the Arcane University has an orrery that needs to be repaired. It uses dwarven mechanisms in order to operate. Honestly, it's just an overglorified fetch quest. The rewards are blessings of the planets and moons that temporarily improve some attributes while draining others. Read your horoscopes carefully, Nerevar. Come, Nerevar, come. Witness the Daedric quests in Oblivion Remastered, given to you by those false gods known as Daedric Princes. Honestly, Nerevar, the hero of Kvatch gets subpar quests compared to you and the Dragonborn. In any case, without further delay, let's begin the sermon. Now, Nerevar, I'm going to give you my raw and unfiltered opinions on how lacking some of them are. Well, first of all, the main plot of Oblivion is a Daedric quest. Yes, Nerevar, fighting the cult known as the Mythic Dawn and helping that mongrel dog of the Empire, Martin Septim, fight Mehrunes Dagon are both one massive Daedric quest. Have you ever wondered why the shrine of Mehrunes Dagon is underground while all other shrines are on the surface? Well, that's because the Mythic Dawn is up to no good, and that Enwam Mankar Cameron is too busy opening Oblivion gates and opening a portal to his paradise. What a grand and intoxicating innocence. Also, there's the Mehrunes Razor DLC, where the hero has to crawl through a convoluted and long dungeon. While I do not deny the power of the Razor, I do not think it worth crawling across glass to receive.
This is worthless.
Nerevar, unicorns are majestic creatures, but did you know? You can actually find one in Cyrodiil. Well, you could have found one, but the hero of Kvatch got to it first and detached its horn after killing a bunch of minotaurs. Does this mean the hero has betrayed Alessia's kin? Do you know why all of this happened? Because of the quest by that furry false god, Daedric Prince Hirsine. Yes, for some reason he wants the unicorn horn, and I don't even want to know what he is going to use it for. Probably the same reason Isolde in Skyrim wants the mammoth's tusk. At least it involves a unique experience, unlike some of these quests. Moving on to the falsest god of all, Azura. After completely and totally derailing my plans in Morrowind, she appears to the hero of Kvatch with a single quest. Clear some vampires from a cave. Seriously, Nerevar? After all the conspiring you and her did in Morrowind, in Oblivion the only thing she requires is the elimination of some vampire Enwas. Vampire Enwas, Nerevar. She could have done something that tied into Morrowind, but instead my name is not even mentioned once in Oblivion and the surrounding DLCs. What a fool she is. This whole mission proves I was right. Azura and her sisters are false gods. They couldn't protect you, sweet Nerevar, and she failed to protect her flock in Cyrodiil. Yet they call her a god? What a grand and intoxicating blasphemy. Moving on to the second falsest god who ever did god. Boethia in the Tournament of the Ten Bloods is where you get to fight 6 Enwas, 2 farm tools, and 1 Dunmer. Nerevar, we have already broken down Tamrielic races so many times that it would be considered beating a dead Shadowmare at this point. All I am going to say is that the hero of Kvatch represents the people of his race, and takes the place of the contestant that was supposed to represent in its stead. In any case, in Oblivion Remastered, all of them have affinity for lava, and they jump into the lava before the contest even starts. What fools they are! We now move on to Mephala, the third member of the trinity of falsest gods of the false gods, who asks the hero of Kvatch to create a feud between a Dunmer family and an Enwan Nord family in Bleaker's Way. The Dunmer are the great and honorable Davilis, while the Nords are the dishonorable Uthgars. The hero of Kvatch creates a feud between the two families, causing an all-out brawl after eliminating the heads of each. Usually the Dunmer win, but there is a possibility for the Nords to win as well, so be sure to help tip the favor towards the Davilis family. Next, Nerevar, I would like to discuss the Clavicus Vial quest. Clavicus Vial, the Daedric Prince of Bargain, asks you to get Umbra from a warrior who stole it. The hero goes to Pel's Gate, where the master of a student claims that Umbra drove his student crazy. So much so that the edgy Nord Enwa girl started calling herself Umbra. Her hiding spot is the Aliad ruins nearby, where nothing but rats keep her company. Of course, the hero is not alone. A statue of a dog is in his pocket. You may recall the scamp trader you visited on occasion, Nerevar. You know him, you love him, the split half himself, Barvis. Anyhow, he asked the hero not to return the sword to Clavicus Vial and keep it as a reward. Clavicus Vial, in exchange, offers his silly-looking, useless mask. A mask compared to the power of a shard of a Daedric Prince himself? Don't be a fool, Nerevar, keep the sword. Ah, yes, Malakath, Boethia's excrement, allegedly. He is the most anti-Dunmer prince on this list. So what if Lord Drad wants to use ogres as farm tools? The Dunmer have all the rights in Cyrodiil to use ogres for farm tool purposes, Nerevar. However, Malakath sends the hero of Kvatch not only to liberate the ogres from the estate, but also make Lord Drad and his wife unpaid laborers. Nerevar, only Dunmer are allowed to have that type of laborer. But wait, if there are Dunmer farm tools, I am having an existential crisis, Nerevar. If you are enjoying today's sermon, remember to raise your thumbs, ring the 6th house bell, and write your thoughts on the parchment below. And now for the wee lass herself, straight from the highlands of Scot-I-mean of the Colored Runes. Meridia's quest is similar to Azura's in that it just consists of the hero of Kvatch going to a cave and eliminating some group that goes against the ideals of the false god. In the case of Meridia, it is a bunch of necromancers with overpowered abilities and plenty of zombies. That's it. It's just a mage's guild quest, with only Meridia giving you the quest instead of a mage. Technically, Umaril is related to Meridia, but she doesn't even mention him, so if you are not well versed in the lore, you might not realize this. Molak Bal's quest, while simple, is rather interesting. There is a warrior mongrel dog of the Empire, Mellus Petilius, who, after his wife's untimely demise, decided to become a peace-loving, non-violent man, until the hero of Kvatch provokes him at his wife's grave. He uses the cursed mace that the hero placed on the ground. Nerevar, let me pose you a question. If he was truly committed to non-violence, why did he attack the hero? The hero came to him openly, and not by stealth. Mellus is truly dishonored in both life and the sixth house. On to one of the most underwhelming quests, Nemira's. She sends you to the ruins of Anga to make her rabid followers attack the priests of that false god RK. Her followers look like Smeagol with an aftershave. But that aside, it is a series of repetitive actions. You find her followers, cast the mirror's shroud on them, and they go berserk on the priests. That is it, Nerevar. Literally, that is it. Periite. Oh, Periite. The farm tool-looking false god of pestilence and disease. Well, I did not intend to brag, but there is only one disease called the Divine Disease, and he had no part in its creation. His quest has an interesting premise. He sends the hero of Kvatch to his realm, the Pits, to rescue his followers. However, Nerevar, it looks surprisingly like Mehrunes Dagon's realm. Why? Is it because the devs were lazy and did not construct a new Oblivion realm? Or is it because Periite lied to you and sent you to the Deadlands instead? Either way, there is something strange about that place. So, Sanguine, being the false god of debauchery, sends the hero to ruin a party held in Castle Leowin. It is curious why these people are gathered. Is it some sort of a social meeting? The Countess of Leowin is dining with 4 others, Brita Invel and her husband Jairus, Termanwe, and Vlaurmil Aureus. When the spell is cast, everyone, including the hero, becomes dressed in their birthday suit. Talk about coming to the hero openly. While a bit raunchy, this does honor the sixth house in its own blighted way. And now we enter the realm of nightmares. The kind of nightmare that scares not because of content, but because of its tediousness. In Vermina's quest, you go into some comatose Enwa Altmer wizard's dreams. It is full of nightmare and pure agony going through the grotesque museum that Vermina put him in because he stole her orb. Or alternatively, the hero of Kvatch can just go through the unlocked hatch that they forgot to lock in Oblivion Remastered, grab the orb, ponder it a little bit, and miss out on the unique experience that they were given. And now time for the most requested false god of them all, Sheogorath. Just like Mehrunes Dagon, he has a whole elaborate plotline, second only to the main quest. Yes, the whole of the Shivering Isles is technically a Daedric quest. Come to think of it, the only Aedric quest is the Knights of the Nine, but I am getting distracted, Nerevar. Anyway, the hero of Kvatch mantles Sheogorath, and the old Sheogorath becomes Jigalag. Well, now the Shrine quest itself is interesting. While it might be the old Sheogorath that responds, or his Chamberlain Haskell, the main gist of the quest is to go to the Khajiit Farm Tool village and start enacting a prophecy that involves a lot of cheese, rats, dead sheep, and raining, burning dogs. Yes, Nerevar, immolated dogs raining on a cat village. Why, one of my ash vampires once had a truly maddening experience. He claims that the quest was initiated by the mad god as we know him now. Curiously, in the middle of the quest, Sheogorath's demeanor and voice suddenly changed, and by the end of the quest the hero was speaking directly with Haskell. A truly insane assertion indeed.
Cheese!
And finally we come to Nocturnal, who wants the hero to find her eye. Not her literal eye, of course, another orb quest. Argonian thieves Wibam Na and his wife, Dijin, stole the eye of Nocturnal and hid it in a cave near Leowin. It is infested by trolls. In any case, this is just another fetch quest. However, the reward is the skeleton key. Nerevar, coming to me by stealth, dishonors the sixth house and the tribe unmourn. and so does skeleton key abuse. But if you must use it, at least refrain from auto-attempt spamming. Nerevar, after completing all of these false god Daedric quests, the hero of Kvatch will be summoned to Hermaeus Mora's shrine, but unfortunately it is not that easy. There has to be some main quest progress made before beginning his quest. Anyhow, his quest is pretty simple. Collect the soul of each race using his soul capture spell. Basically, the hero of Kvatch runs around capturing Enwas like they are Pokemon. Don't forget to raise your thumbs and subscribe to my sermons as well. I would like to thank all members and patrons for supporting my work.